All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another Pure IT Tech Roundup, where we like to highlight a curated combination of technologies, things changing in our industry, client stories, partner stories. We dive into it all. And today, joining us, we have John Wingate to my side here. I won't say left or right because I don't know how it's going to present. And just to be low, right, we can do a Brady Bunch wave at each other. And then I have Becky Reed also joining us from Bank Social, and they're both actually involved in a number of different companies. So we're going to dive in a bit to what they're sharing with us today. And if you guys would like to start with some introductions, or maybe you could introduce each other, I don't know.
All right. Well, we have a story that we kind of have titled Credit Union Girl Crypto Guy. And so that's our
Love
story. So, John, do you want to do Credit Union Girl and I'll do Crypto Guy?
Yes, we can do that. So Credit Union Girl, it will start kind of in the middle because we met, that's kind of when my story of when I knew you. We ended up meeting as I was trying to push across the line a credit union, starting a credit union. And I reached out, just to everybody that I could think of through LinkedIn. And Mrs. Becky Reed was the one who within hours responded. And I don't think a day, I'll just make this comment, I don't think a day has gone by since that we haven't talked to each other. And, Becky very quickly understood and had already been looking at the space from various aspects, as early back as, 2016 with what Bonify and CU Ledger had been doing and how just generically the just digital asset and DLT space was set to really break across the payments sector, how it could really do things with payment sector. So she already very well understood the capability and capacity for disruption here. And as we started having those, it was very quick where as we were having those first few meetings, Becky helped me understand that there wasn't just this, thing called credit unions. There was also this whole ecosystem of QSOs and how the collaborative nature of credit unions worked. And it was really when we both understood that the opportunity to not disrupt in a way, like if you think outside the space, you disrupt in a way that disrupts the players in the space and it makes winners and losers, but to create a bunch of winners in the form of credit unions. And that was, I think, a moment of lightning that we both understood. And, just being able to be around Becky for the last couple years and just witness her ability to kind of bridge the gap between credit union people, the people in DeFi, the boards we talk to, the C-level executives we talk to, but then even our community and our team to bring cohesion to how we continue to move forward has been incredible. And she's one of the most incredible people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting personally. And I remind her, and I don't just say this trying to be like a mom, like I love you no matter what, Becky. It's not like that. You're really a tremendously amazing person. And that's how we met. And we could talk for a long time about that, I think.
Yeah. So thank you, John. And likewise, love you back. So John, crypto guy story. So John in 2021 actually created a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization. And you can create DAOs as a legal entity in the state of Wyoming. And so John has a whole community of bank socialites, bank social token holders that belong to the DAO that he started back in 21. Now, John, his history is software development, and he is an entrepreneur, but primarily software development. And he really started getting into Bitcoin really early on because as a developer, that was very interesting and intriguing to him, right? Going in there and playing with it and doing different things with it and just kind of seeing how it might work. And of course, Bitcoin came about in 2008, 2009. So he really saw the similarities between a DAO and a credit union, and that is in my book. It explains that. And so then when he was like, well, I want to start a credit union, right? And NCUA, while he was going through that process, said you probably need a credit union advisor. So that's how we connected. And
then God said it needs to be Becky. Just wanted to add that.
Goodness.
Continue. Please continue. Please continue.
So immediately, and I really thought, guys, that he was connecting with me because of the crypto stuff that I had been posting on LinkedIn. You know, I'm very prolific on LinkedIn. I post stuff all the time. So I'm like, oh, this is a crypto guy that's connecting with me. Yep, I'm going to connect with him. And then he's like, I want to start a credit union. I'm like, wait, what? You want to do what? Yeah. And I'm like, well, I don't know that you really want to do that to begin with. I think you need to start a QSO. And then we started that conversation about QSOs. But there you go. There's kind of the in short story of credit union girl and crypto guy.
So that's great. And you both touched on a few things that we're going to talk about a little bit more today, right? Not only the little nugget dropped right there, that Becky's book, in case those following along at home don't know, yes, Becky wrote a book, and yes, it's phenomenal, and yes, it's very consumable and easy to read, and we'll dive into that, and I'll make sure that we link a link to the book with this video. But let's talk a little bit about Bank Social and what Bank Social is and how it's supporting credit unions. Like what is the vision and the mission with Bank Social?
So, you know, overall, the mission and vision of Bank Social is, you know, there's this opportunity out here called Web3. I won't get into all the different ways that can play out. There's this opportunity called Web3, and credit unions in the Web2 era of apps and app development, everybody was just, you know, the ability to kind of move lockstep was a lot more hindered back in those days. We feel like, and a lot of the credit unions are starting to agree and understand that this Web3 movement, this distributed, decentralized financial movement is really what credit unions already are. They are analog, decentralized finance. They're the way they collaborate, the way they don't compete, the way they share members. I mean, we've seen how some people have 3 and 4 credit union accounts, right? This is the concept of decentralized finance. Look, me too. I think all of us right here, right? We are no exception to the rule. And I think generally when we talk to, you know, members, when we talk to, you know, people who are employees of credit unions, this is the case. And so with the concepts of Web3, with the concepts of, you know, CFPB moving towards the open banking framework, you know, there was an article yesterday that somebody wrote about, they're admitting that in the Web2 framework, this doesn't work. Open banking in the Web2 framework is just going to create thousands of Experian honeypots. It doesn't work. Where it does work is when you slightly shift your mindset and reorganize the technologies. That we're not creating new technologies, we're creating new formations of existing technologies. That's Web3, and that's what we're bringing to credit unions, because we don't believe there's any other regulated organizational space in the world, frankly, that could move as fast into this new future world than the American credit union ecosystem.
Wow. Anything to add to that, Becky?
So that is a very 100,000 foot view of what we do.
Take me down.
Yeah. So if I were to bring it down a little bit, we're a software company that provides open banking software to credit unions. So ultimately, that's what we do.
That's
and
great.
Just to go a little bit deeper into that, it's in the basic forms of, you know, identity. How do you secure identity against AI and centralized theft and fraud mitigation? How do you do that? Web3. How do you handle kind of the digitization, the tokenization of assets, right? Web3. How do you handle payment systems in the new world, real time, cross channel, omni-channel, cross border, omni-border? Web3. So those are the 3 main components of the Web3 ecosystem, the software platform that is the open banking Bank Social ecosystem.
And so tell me a little bit about how that translates into the new credit union, right? How is it going to be a bit different, and how are we reimagining what it means? What's maybe high level, what's the same, what's different?
Go ahead, John.
So what's the same, and we try to tell this to the everybody we talk to. What's the same is it's the same from the perspective of when you had paper ledgers, you did the same thing. When you had Excel spreadsheets, you did the same thing. Database, same thing. DLT, same thing. It's the same exact thing. It's just a different combination of technologies. What we really want to prove out with this model, with this new credit union model that we're working on in the proposed DeFi federal credit union, is there's a new way to launch a credit union that is a leapfrog forward and an ability to tap into markets that have otherwise been excluded from, or like you have these digital economies that are spinning up. We were talking to a gentleman yesterday who told us that the last time an update was made to field of membership for credit unions was in 96, before you ever had digital communities. And so it doesn't even contemplate digital communities. And I would say that if we had to summarize our major goal with this, it's not to create a credit union that competes with other credit unions. It's to have the credit union industry embrace the fact that there are new ways to bring this like financial freedom opportunity to more fields of memberships, and do it in a way that's easier to spin up, easier to manage, easier to regulate, more resilient to fraud, and more resilient to concentration of liquidity. All of these benefits that we can by proving. And the hard part is chicken or egg. We had that conversation yesterday. We want them to give us the ability to lay the egg in an incubator style manner, and let's see that if it comes out to be a chicken. That's what we're working on right now. So Becky, go ahead, give us a little bit more of a deep dive on that.
Well, we believe that credit unions are analog DeFi, right? So the DeFi community is born out of a digitally native environment. And credit unions, while we can move that direction, credit unions started out, of course, doing things with paper on a paper ledger, and have moved through the digital world. And Aaron, Pure IT helps credit unions with their digital roadmap, right? And helps them move through that process. And some credit unions still do things on paper. I hope credit unions still aren't faxing things, but I bet they probably still do. All the way up to using the databases and that John is talking about. And so really what's different is we're just taking that model and moving it into a digitally native space.
And I think another thing that's important for credit unions generally listening is, one thing you always come to is, well, what's the cost of making this type of move, right? And the traditional model has been such that you've got to literally pay off your old 2-year either you stay the 2-year, 5-year contract you have and you don't look at anything else, or you cancel that contract and you pay a heavy fee. What we want to demonstrate, and what we are doing, the way we're implementing this, is it literally can be a replacement. So if you are in a transition point where you can get out of a contract and move into something new, you can, or you can write it transactionally. There's no big upfront cost. There's no ongoing cost. It's really because of the way, credit union, the technology that powers most banks. Let's not even say credit unions. Let's say most banks that don't have their own IT teams like Chase, right? Not the trillion, but the $1 billion or maybe the $100 million banks. They're all susceptible to this fatigue of you're relying upon software that's been written in the last 40 years and hasn't really gone through an upgrade. The silver lining there is that these technologies, specifically what we're doing, can literally be bolted alongside, and you don't have these huge upfront costs and ongoing costs. The technology is such that we can bill transactionally. That didn't exist 40 years ago with COBOL. You had to do things where it rolled up at night, stopped, did a build based, now we don't have to do that anymore. The other silver lining is that if you look at where things can take the kind of biggest leap, Kyle Hopman says this, he's like, if you go to Africa, they don't have to have, right now they're moving from literally telephone lines to 5G LTE latest. Everybody, the people on the street that are asking for money are doing it with phones. Okay. That's the level of threshold jump they've had. Credit unions are kind of in a similar manner because they haven't paid all along for these incremental updates that have just been like, well, we just did that. We just did that. We just did that. Some of them are like 5, 6, 7, 10 years. I mean, Becky, you went through that at Lone Star, right? When you came in, it was like, that's when you engaged with Pure IT and said, hey, look, there's a better way to do this and leapfrog us forward. We don't have to implement 3G, then 4G, then 5G, then. And
Right.
so that's kind of the silver lining here is we see this transactional model as being something you can implement now, dip your toe in the water and get ahead of the curve and be ready when it's time for you to really revamp your systems and move forward in this Web3 manner.
Okay, so I know we're getting close on time, and I appreciate all of that background. And where it's actually making my head spin is that I think we might want to have you guys come back on and maybe deep dive if a credit union, if a financial institution is interested in exploring Bank Social more. What does that mean? What does that transition look like? So I think we'll take that away as a potentially part B, if you will, right? And I love where this is going, and it was causing me to have more questions that I know would take us way beyond what we had scheduled for today. So I do want to jump back, Becky, to the book. So you wrote a book. Can you tell us a little bit about like why you wrote the book? What brought it on?
Absolutely. So we talked earlier about the credit union girl crypto guy story. And that story is really the root of the book. Both John and I came from different perspectives. He from the DeFi community, me from the credit union community, but both of us saw the shared ethos between the two communities. And that perspective together combined was really the impetus for me writing the book. I was like, other people need to understand this. And when I speak, I go out and speak and I'll do a 20-minute or a 45-minute presentation. I can't get to all of it. So, I wanted to be able to go, okay, if you want to see all the backup documentation as to why I think this is true and John thinks this is true, go get the book. So that's really where it started.
So I was reading the book, and I'll have to say I was feverishly reading, and this week blew past me. So I'm 75% of the way there. But I will say the first 3/4 of the book, I can attest to, and having come up through the credit union side, learning about DeFi, trying to, you break it down in such a consumable way that even if I didn't know about the credit unions and how credit unions started and where they came from and how they've evolved over time, it's so informative. And I thought it was phenomenal. And then blowing my mind with like the smart contracts and the tokenization and everything else, which I didn't have as much exposure to, was so helpful for me because I was trying to Google smart contracts. I'm like, so who owns the contract then? I'm over here with my practical brain like, but how does it all work? And so maybe that's in the last quarter of the book, but I wanted to talk with you guys, just take maybe 2 minutes before we run out of time here. And so on this, decentralized, I'll say DeFi side, how do the contracts, how does it, can you break it down for, a third grade brain here and tell me, how do we all come together to be a part of this? Like, how can I contribute? How can I get on the, be my own node if I can be my own node? I don't even know. Like, tell me a little bit.
So John will get really into the technology,
I bet.
And he can, but definitely read the book to get a deeper dive. But your brain, Aaron, is in a Web 2 world. And so you're trying to think about, and everybody's brain is, it's okay. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But you're trying to think about a smart contract in a Web 2 world, and it just,
Yes.
can't. You have to get out of that thinking. So you have to understand distributed ledger technology. You need to understand decentralized nodes on a network. You need to understand how you, as an individual, Aaron, can actually own your data and can do everything in a digital way in the way you want to do it without some central authority saying, this is what you have to do, 1, 2, 3. You can say, I think I need to do 1, 2, 3, and maybe I want to do 1 and 3 and 2. So it puts the person and the human at the center of the transaction as opposed to being the end result of the transaction or the monetization of the transaction, which, you know, all of our data, everybody out there is using it for all kinds of things. So smart contracts are just one way. But when Ethereum came out, which is a blockchain, and Ethereum, the cryptocurrency that rides on the Ethereum chain, is different from Bitcoin because of the smart contract capability. And that capability allows basically programmability on chain. So there are some really cool things you can do with being able to program that token. And smart contracts is what that is. It can power a DAO like what John has. It can power a loan. It can power investing in something, tokenization of real world assets. And I know I'm getting really super technical.
It's distributed. Here. The best way to think about it is it's distributed compute power. Yeah. So instead of you writing a program and putting it on a centralized AWS platform that's controlled by a central computer, it's distributed compute. And you can actually lock that down to be to a certain holder or to a certain wallet holder or to a certain holder of tokens or to the world. It can be open to the world. It's really just programmable distributed compute that's hosted on many nodes. So it's resilient to going down, right? It's resilient to a lot of things. So it can't be censored. It can't be taken down. To me, the conversation, if we don't want to get too technical, it really comes back down to we can't even fathom the number of ways that Web3 technologies will replace everything we're doing. And the best example I have for that is the Uber example. If we're trying to talk about why Web 2 is going to be important because it utilizes apps and yeah, the balloons got the congratulations. If we're trying to talk about Web 2 and why it's going to be important because it uses apps and databases and we can do all these things, that's hard to convey. Maybe we can talk about that with technologists. But if I tell you the reason why Web 2 is important and apps are important is because you can push a button and some guy down the road who just finished his coffee is going to come pick you up in his Uber, that's right. You know, kind of what Web 2 and Web 3. And when we talk about Web 3, the example I can give to that is with your, your identity, for example. When you walk in somewhere and you present your identity in a liquor store, the person doesn't need to know that your birthday is tomorrow. They just need to know that you're over 18. The other way to think about that is if you've got in the Web 2 world 4 or 5 accounts and your wallet gets hacked, your phone gets hacked, now you've got to contact each one of those people to say, hey, shut me down. Hopefully the money isn't lost. In the Web3 world, because you control the credential and you control a multi-factor access via a certificate, like a distributed certificate, as soon as your phone gets hacked, you can literally revoke the certificate. And because all those centralized systems are relying upon distributed ledger Web3 technologies, they, as somebody's trying to log in, can go, is that cert still active? No, John canceled his cert, not going to let you log in. That's the shift in mentality that has to happen to really understand kind of how Web 3 versus Web 2 will make a difference in our lives.
Wow. Well, I'm sure everybody's mind is blown, like mine. But this has been phenomenal, and we would love to have you guys come back and deep dive a little bit more with us in the future. Any final thoughts? I know we're up against time, but any final thoughts, Becky, John?
So my final thought is credit unions are where this new digital economy needs to live because of the reasons we've all talked about. So read my book to find out more.
What she said. What she said. She said.
Boom. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you so much.